everybody. My name is Jen, and I'm leading the Christ-Centered Recovery meeting tonight. We meet Monday nights from 7 to 8 p.m. All are welcome who desire freedom from your life-dominating sin and addiction. If you or anyone you know needs help or recovery support, please email recovery@ghproject.org or call 610-874-2753. What is Greenhouse Project? We live life in the struggle with neighbors because every life is meant to flourish. We cultivate gospel-centered, long-term relationships and community support for those who are struggling in Chester, PA. Our ministry provides safe environments for life transformation through free recovery counseling, life coaching, food outreach, youth mentorship, and church fellowship. To learn more about the church programs and event volunteering, you can go to ghproject.org. And if you're here, always check out the bulletin board here too. You can also sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter if you go to the website. We're on social media, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. And I already told you, this portion of the meeting is recorded. Just the message portion. We do post our recovery messages and Sunday sermons on YouTube weekly. So I always through the week, if you need a little something extra, go to YouTube, listen to a message, a Sunday sermon. I know it helps me to listen to other things when I'm not in church or in a meeting. We are a donor-supported ministry, so thank you to those who give. It supports the meeting, the coffee, utilities. You can financially support today by using the donation box, which is right there by the door, closet door. Or you could also go online. And I'll open us up in prayer. Dear Lord, I just thank you for this night. I just thank you for everybody that showed up here, Lord. I just ask that you would guide this meeting, Lord, that it would be led by the Holy Spirit, Lord. I just pray that you would work in us and through us, Lord. And I just pray that you would prepare all of our hearts for a word from you, Lord. And I lift this up in Jesus' name. And I'm going to read the full Serenity Prayer. If you have a recovery Bible, it is on page 1672, but I'm going to go ahead and read it. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace, taking as Jesus did this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that he will make all things right if I surrender to his will, that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with him forever in the next. Amen. Do ask everyone to silence or turn off all your devices. I'm pretty sure mine's already there, but I just want to make sure. And then I always like to turn this silent. Okay, so we do let you know it's okay to share. Well, we're not online anymore, so I'm going to skip that part. Okay, well, I'll get to that a little bit later. So we'll get to the speaker of the topic. So I am your speaker tonight. My name is Jen, and I'm happy to be here. I knew there was going to be some new faces tonight, so I figured I was just going to basically share my testimony and get into some scripture. So some of you that know me, you might have heard this already. Sorry, apologize in advance. Maybe you'll hear something new that you didn't hear before. But anyway, my name is Jen, and I'm so grateful to be here and so grateful that God got a hold of me and absolutely changed my life. I entered the recovery process June 28th, 2004. At that point in my life, I did not have a relationship with God. I was actually an atheist. I entered the recovery process, and I came to know God, and then I came to know Christ. And because of my relationship with God, I haven't picked up a drink since that day. And And I'm still here to stay accountable, because I've learned early on I'm not drunk proof, and I learned early on because I've seen too many people. I've been in the recovery for too long, and I've seen too many people go back out. And it taught me I have to keep doing today what I did early on, I loved partying. It started early when I was started with marijuana and alcohol in my teens, and then it led into heavier things that I swore I was never going to do. I got into a lot of things. The list of things that I didn't do was a lot shorter than the things that I did do. I don't want to spend too much time here, although I could, because I have a lot of war stories, and this place, drugs and alcohol brought me to places I thought I would never go. But thankfully it brought me to my bottom, because it was when the pain got great enough that I was willing to accept help. When I decided it was time to get help, I was seriously considering suicide on a daily basis. I was in a place where I hated myself, I hated who I was, I hated what I was doing, but I just didn't know how to stop it. And I was always worked very hard to provide a roof over my head. I didn't have much enablers, but I was a couple months behind on my rent. I was a couple months behind on my car. I think my phone was shut off. My electricity was probably pretty close to being shut off. I know when I was in my addiction, I never took the electric bill serious until I got the shut-off notice. So when I got the shut-off notice, that's when I took it serious, and it was shut off a few times. And I pulled an all-nighter. I was up all night, and I didn't have enough alcohol or enough other kind of substances to help me go to sleep. And I was in this place this one particular night. It was a Saturday night that I just didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have any alcohol. I was completely out of substances, and there was no one to call. There was nowhere to get anything from. My sister was sleeping with my nephew, and I waited till 10 o'clock. But during this time of panic, when I couldn't sleep, I couldn't do anything, I had a vision. I now believe God gave me that vision. I didn't know it at the time, but I had this vision of everything that I worked so hard for, I was about to lose. And I went to my sister's house at 10 o'clock. She had a fridge full of beer, and I started chugging beers because I had this pain in me that wouldn't go away, that anxiety, the feelings that actually set in when you're coming off of a run. And all of a sudden the alcohol stopped working, and I didn't know what to do with myself, and I ended up going to my sister called, looked in the yellow pages. That was in 2004, so we had the yellow pages back then. I don't know if we had Google, although my very first meeting was in a chat room before this incident. But anyway, I don't have time to get into that. She called the Alcoholics Anonymous intergroup, and I ended up going to a meeting, and my life has never been the same since. I ended up getting a sponsor, and I walked through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And getting a relationship with God was foundational for me, and it's still the foundation of my life today. My sponsor taught me early on, start your day with God in prayer. And I remember I really struggled with God. I wasn't sure I believed in him, but I knew that I didn't know how to stay sober, and I knew that I was in pain. So I was willing to do whatever my sponsor told me to do, because I knew I had to do something, and I knew my way wasn't working. I lived my life on my own will all these years, and this is where it got me. So I was finally in a place that I was able to take some direction. And as I walked through the 12 steps with my sponsor, I was on steps 2 and 3 for a while, because I really struggled with God. And my sponsor really wanted me. She would not move on out of these steps until I was starting my day with God. She wanted me on my knees. And it's quite simple. She told me to get on my knees, ask God to keep me sober, and at night thank him. And it took me quite a few months to make that a routine. But once I finally did, the anxiety started to lift a little bit. It was amazing, because I remember after I did it 5 days in a row, I got on my, now there's no written formula. It doesn't mean if you go home and you get on your knees 5 days in a row that you're going to have the same experience I did. All of our situations are different. I can just share for you what happened with me. But when I finally got on my knees, and she made sure I was on my knees. She kept asking me, get on your knees, not just standing outside while I'm smoking a cigarette, get on your knees. And after 5 days of doing this, like, all of a sudden I realized something was missing. I realized it was the anxiety. And I just remember being so happy, like, oh my gosh, I have no anxiety. And it was unreal for me that I had to run to a meeting, because my sponsor taught me, go to a meeting when you're struggling to share, to get your hand up. But she also taught me, go and when something good happens and share the hope, you know. So I remember going to a meeting and sharing that. And, you know, something happened. You know, I started out, you know, I came to, and then I came to believe. And I like to sum the steps up like that. Step 1 is I came. Step 2, I came to, and then step 3, I came to believe. And then, you know, when I came to believe, then I had to, you know, comes trusting God. And trusting God, and all through the steps and all through the recovery, it's all God. We have a spiritual malady, you know. It's all in our literature. And I remember something happened. Like, all of a sudden, something happened, and the most important thing to me was God. Like, I just wanted to know who this God was, and I was searching. I started searching churches outside of meetings. I was looking into all types of churches. I was going to Catholic church. I was going to Methodist church. I was looking into Buddhism. I was going everywhere. And someone led me to the Gospel of John. And I started reading the Gospel of John. And I'm trying to speed things up to get into what I wanted to get into tonight. But at 2 years sober, I received Christ into my life. But it all started with a personal relationship with God. You know? And for me, you know, I know some people, it happens really fast, you know, and they can believe in God right away. And I've walked people through the steps, and I've been in recovery for 19 years. I'm coming up on my, you know, one day at a time, not getting ahead of myself, but a big one. And, you know, the most important thing you can do in the recovery process is develop that personal relationship with God. And that's, everyone's relationship is going to be a little bit different. And whenever I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'm like, you have to have that personal relationship with God, because God will speak to you, and you'll know what it is, whether he's speaking to you through a pastor at church, someone through a meeting, you read something, you hear something on the radio, you'll just know it and you'll feel it. And then it's our job to be obedient to that. But I can offer you some advice and tell you what I think if you share your circumstances with me. But at the end of the day, God's going to guide you, and he might speak to you through me. But taking that alone time with God is imperative. And it's where I learned how to change, because I can't change myself. And I tried. I spent many years saying, I'm never drinking again. I'm never going to drink. Whenever I came to, oh man, I'm not doing that again. And it wasn't until I allowed God to enter my life that I was able to be broken free from that bondage of addiction. And it happened for me slowly, piecemeal. And when I spend time with God in the morning, and I take time to connect to his voice, because it can be hard to discern God's voice. And we talked about that a few weeks ago, you know, discerning God's voice. But when you take just a few moments in the morning, it helps you connect with his voice, and his voice will be a little bit louder than the outside noise. Because Satan, our lower power, we have a lower power. We have our higher power that we say in secular programs, and our lower power. It's God, and the lower power also, aka Satan. You know, that wants to work through us through alcohol. And our lower power, Satan, wants us to drink. He wants us to drug. And he works with us through people. So we kind of have to be able to discern God's voice. And being in the Word, we talked a few weeks ago about filling our spirit and our God. When we're filling our life with prayer and communication with God, and we're taking time to have that relationship with God, his voice is going to be stronger and more demanding in our life, and it's going to overshadow our Satan's voice, our lower power's voice. So it's important to take that time with God. Trust was developed, and what happened was, when I was new, I started to have moments and days of faith, and then the doubt would creep in, and then what would happen is, the longer I stayed on track, the longer I kept walking through the steps and kept starting my day with God, the stronger my faith got, and the smaller my doubt got, until I got to the place where I was just full of faith. And the doubt is always going to come in. As long as you're human, we're going to have times, in our life. We're not perfect. We're just walking this road together, and we have tools at our feet today. That's what the difference is today. So I want to move along. So here I am, sober for a few years. I've come to believe in God, and one thing I've learned is it's easy to trust in God when everything is going well, and things are going well. But what about when they're not going well? And when I was newer at my faith walk, it was harder. It was definitely harder. Because the longer that you walk with God and you allow him to work in your life, you have more trust in him. So when the hard times come, but that's where I needed people, I needed mentors, sponsors, reach out to people. And I learned to have a gratitude list. So gratitude list is big in recovery, because sometimes we can be going through things and we make it a lot bigger than it really is, and if you write down your gratitude list. Now, I was taught to have a gratitude list in recovery, early in my recovery, but also I'm now in a place where I'm trying to grow a business, and I've joined these other groups for my business and mindset, and I've given this gift of building my own business, and they all talk about having a gratitude list and being grateful, and it's the small things that we take for granted every day that we need to remember. Running water, heat, electricity, exactly. With everything that's going on overseas, the fact that we can live here and not have to run from our house, because we're being chased out, and I know that I have a friend who was born and raised her entire life in a wheelchair, and we have our feet. So we always have something to be grateful for, no matter what's going on. Now, that's not to negate that sometimes that we don't have hard times, The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes that there's going to be certain seasons in life. So I'm going to go ahead. This is from Ecclesiastes 3. There's a time for everything. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away. There's seasons. We have seasons of joy. We have fun. But we have seasons of hardship. There's mourning. In this life, we're going to have mourning. There's going to be tears. But there's also going to be laughter. And we have to remember that everything is a season. And the season does not last forever. Now, when I was reading this, and where were we at? There was one part that led me into Proverbs. A time to love and a time to hate. So I really stopped on that. I'm like, okay, now I get time to love, but time to hate. And I had to meditate on that for a little bit and meditate, because I'm like, I've always been taught not to hate. I want to love people, And I was reminded that, that God hates certain things. And I was brought over into the Proverbs. And I love the Proverbs, because if you read the Bible, when I first was new to the Bible, I really struggled with the language and understanding the metaphors, that whatever it is, when I was very new. And that's why being in a Bible preaching church helps. God will speak to you, and he would show me later. But when I got to the book of Proverbs, I loved the Proverbs only because it was like a language I could understand. But anyway, so if you go to Proverbs chapter 6, there are 6 things the Lord hates. No, 7 things he detests. Haughty eyes, which is pride. A lying tongue. Hands that kill the innocent. A heart that plots evil. Feet that race to do wrong. A false witness who pours out lies. A person who sows discord in a family. It says that God hates these, and he detests these. So there are things that God hates. He hates the injustice of the world, So we can dislike these and hate them. But it's what we do with our anger and our hate. It's okay to hate wrong things. There are things that are going on in this world that upset me, that I just don't understand, and I hate the injustice of it. At the end of the day, I know God is in control, and I trust him. And it took me a little while to get to this faith, though, but I would encourage you, if you get to these places, talk it out with God, talk it out with God. Like, be real in your relationship with God. And that's how, as I was developing my relationship with God, you don't have to have a certain language. You don't have to pray a certain way to talk to God. You talk to him like you would talk to your brother, your mother, your father. And I can remember times getting angry at God and kind of yelling at God. And it was kind of funny, because that's when I realized I believed in God. I'm like, wow, I guess I believe in God if I'm going to get angry and yell at him, And I've also learned that in mentoring and sponsoring others, a lot of times people say they don't believe in God, but they're angry at him. If you really dig deep, they're angry. Something happened. And I would encourage you, if you're in that place, talk to him. And it's okay to have this real relationship with him, because how I came to even faith in Christ, I was actually angry at God. I was on my knees, and I was actually saying to him, because a 16-year-old girl I knew, or my colleague's daughter, who was 16 years old, died in a car accident. And he was reading his Bible every day at work. And here I am. I was less than 2 years sober, but I knew who I was. And I remember when I came into work that morning, and the mood was somber, and we found out his daughter died in a car accident. She was a beautiful girl that served in her church, and she head of our soccer team, and I just remember getting so angry. God, why would you take her and not take me? And I got on my knees, and I remember saying to God, I'm like, why am I even praying for this man? I was like, my prayers don't mean anything. And this was my talk to God and my prayer with God, and I was angry at him. I'm like, the only reason why people tell me to pray is because there's nothing else I can do. And I'm like, what do my prayers really mean? And I left that, and I got up, and I was on my knees, because my sponsor told me, I don't know, you don't always have to be on your knees, but I was just in a place of deep sorrow that I felt on my knees, and I was crying out to God. But God listened to that, and I ended up going to the funeral. And I remember, as I was waiting in line, I was like, what do I say to this man that just lost a 16-year-old daughter in a car accident? And the only thing I could say to him when I got up there is I looked him in the eye and I said, you're in my prayers. And he walked up closely to me and he grabbed my hands and he looked me deep in the eyes and he said, thank you. He's like, that's what's holding me up right now. And at that moment, I felt God, the creator of the universe, speaking to my life, letting me know that my prayers do matter, that my prayer was helping this man. And God spoke to me through that gentleman. And it was a few weeks after that situation where I got on my knees and asked Jesus into my life. But the point I'm trying to drive here is that personal relationship with God, and you can be real with him. Be real, what you're really feeling, what you're really going through, and he will respond. He will respond. So I've come to this faith. I've grown to love God, and life can still be difficult sometimes. It's difficult, but I have the tools today. And I look back, in my trials. Now, in my before God days, my delinquent days, I never grew. I never learned. I kept doing the same thing over and over again. I was someone that you really didn't want to be around, And I was also a bad influence. I like to drag people down with me, But as I developed this relationship with God, God was the only thing, and God was only way I was able to put the drink and the drug down. But what happened is when I started to go through these tough times, and it's hard to go through difficult times sober, and to feel the pain, it's hard. I've been there. And it's very painful. But if you walk through that pain and you come out changed, because God's working in you and through you. And when I look at these situations that I've been in, and some of them involved other people dying and funerals, God was at work in it all. And I could see the beauty in it, but he's also changing me. I come out of these situations, these difficult situations, with lessons and wisdom and growth. And that is something I never did before God. And then he uses what I've been through to help another person. I have a purpose today. I can remember sitting on a bar stool in my 20s just going, what's the purpose of life? Like, what is this all for? Fearing that I was going to kill someone behind the wheel of, because I drove drunk all the time. And I had this fear that I could kill someone. I didn't know what was going to happen. And with this life with God, he gives me a purpose. There's joy and meaning. It's a purposeful life. And I've learned how to enjoy life. And I think I wrote it down. I wanted to write it down so I would remember to say it. That I could see the beauty in grave situations. Because I could see, I've shared with the people that have been here for a while about my colleague Keith, who died, and it was very sad. It was very sad. I was heartbroken. I worked with him for 13 years, and but I got to share the love of Christ, and he received the love of Christ right before he died. And there has been nothing more beautiful. And if I wasn't walking this life, I would have never have gotten to experience that. So God can use you. I've had the opportunity. I never left Delco. The bars in Delco I frequented. I was on pool leagues. My whole life revolved around the bars, gossip, everything, shooting pool, the after-hour parties, the after-hour clubs, and never really left Delco. And in my walk with God, I've gotten to go on missions trips. I got to go to Haiti in 2010. I remember I was at a meeting when I was about 90 days sober, and this gentleman, I'll never forget this, but he said how he treated his brother to a trip to Israel. And I'm like, Israel? You can actually go to Israel? Like, it baffled me that you could even go that far away across the country. And I was like, wow, I was so amazed by that. I got to go to Egypt and Israel in 2012. I got to go to Kenya in 2013. It's been a little while, but I've gotten to travel and see so much. And I shared my testimony in a high school in Haiti at a women's conference in Kenya. And man, what I have gotten to experience is beautiful. Not to say it wasn't without trials. We're always going to have trials. But I can just promise you that if you give your life to God and submit to Him and walk with Him, He will just blow your mind. He has me. And what I have today, I never wanted. I never pictured, I was an atheist. I wanted no parts of church. I wanted no parts of God. But He'll do a work in you that will just absolutely amaze you. And it starts with a little prayer, And that's how it started for me, and He absolutely changed my life. And there's so much more that I could go on to. But I did want to share one last thing. It's my favorite saying out of the big book. So I did my 12 steps through the AA program, which I'm still a part of today. I still go to give back, and I still have my same sponsor today. But it's on acceptance, and it's on page 417, at least in this edition. I don't know if there's a new edition. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me. And I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Nothing, absolutely nothing, happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, my addiction, my life problems, I added in those few things. But until I could accept, I could not stay sober or clean. Unless I accept life completely on life terms, I cannot be happy. I need to concentrate not so much on what needs to be changed in the world as on what needs to be changed in me and my attitudes. And that's still how I live today. Sometimes, it's easy to get mad at things and injustices, but I always have to bring it back to myself in every situation, because I have no control over anybody else, but I can control how I react. And I need to focus on myself. And I can't even say that I can control it. It's really rely on God. I got to come to God. And it's through my relationship with God that I'm able, He walks with me and guides me in changes that I need to make. And they happen slowly, a little at a time. But when you look back, like every year I look back and I'm a different person. But I don't know. I'm just so grateful that God has given me this life and this opportunity. And that's about all I have. So thank you.